fuel the Black Blood's power. My power.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. So then, we're reaching the thrilling conclusion. We're venturing off to yet another broken planet. This time, it's Karesh, homeworld of the Athereals. Always a good start to the end of a story for WoW, kinda, where we go to another planet. Yeah. The end is certainly near for the tale of War Within, and the initial first part of this three-part saga. What's felt like a very slow burn has definitely jumped the metaphorical shark and launched itself directly into space. Quite literally, in fact. Going from the goblins of Undermine mending the Dark Heart directly into an ethereal yoinking that thing so that it can help revive their apparent new god and once destroyer Dementius up in space. Whew. Yeah. The ancient long enemy of the Athereals, Dementius, whom had a part to play in the planet's destruction, is making a grand return as our final antagonist in this new broken world for War Within. And that's exactly who we'll be talking about today, as well as his harbinger of Xal'atath, whom is also quite integral to not only the War Within, Karesh, but this World Soul saga as a whole, really. She is the main villain, at least as far as we know for this trilogy. I'm not sure if she'll disappear in Midnight or something bad will happen to her in Midnight. Who knows, a Rittercron, blah blah blah. But yeah, she is going to be here for the whole saga, I'm pretty sure. Many spoilers for the next upcoming patch, and potentially even Midnight is about to be dug right into. So you've been warned, because we're going to be theorizing the ending to Ghost of Karesh here, so there's going to be a lot of juicy, spoilerly, spicy details here. So, one of the things that I think they did a grand job of first underlining was the threat of Dementius as a whole, even back in Dragonflight. It wasn't as if he came out of nowhere here. No, there was some foreshadowing going on at the very least. When Rittercron first gifted Xal'atath the empowered Dark Heart to begin her own plan of grand proportions, it was Locus-Walker who made it clear on why this radiant song that everyone had been hearing around the globe was so dire. Azeroth ringing out to people was a warning, and in that warning was that Locus-Walker believed to be a Void Lord. But not just any Void Lord, but the Void Lord that was going to consume his world at the time of Karesh, Dementius. And much like both Azeroth and Argus, Karesh was too a world soul at one point and had an abundance in potential, but was taken out before its time. What's more notable and major spoiler here is that the Athereals didn't exactly lose their world to Dementius. I mean, they did, but not in the way we initially imagined. Rather, instead, they rigged the planet to explode to destroy Dementius and save the universe from him. It didn't work out exactly, as Dementius would pop up to other worlds, such as Draenor or Outland, and, well, a piece of him would be defeated there again. But the damage they did was a salvation that they somewhat rings true. It did weaken Dementius. Though they lost themselves in the process, they became mummies of magical proportions, and also they lost their worlds. This was something that Locus-Walker, Venari, the broker from the Maw, and apparently Xal'atath all had a hand in doing. Destroying Karesh for the sake of the universe and, well, the greater good, so to speak. That's right as well, the apparent harbinger of Dementius, his Silver Surfer, so to speak, of warning and summoning worlds of their doom at his hands, wasn't exactly as chummy with Dementius as we initially thought with her. In fact, in parallel to the many antagonists and anti-heroes in Warcraft, Xal'atath too was forced into her current role after Dementius apparently consumed her own world. Xal'atath herself, as I once theorized, is not some old god or void entity of some kind, but rather a mortal, just like Locus-Walker, Illyria, or even us. But she's become something so much grander now. We don't know all the details on how this all transpired, I don't believe, but it certainly recontextualizes everything that we've seen from Xal'atath until now. What I once thought was a ploy and plot by Xal'atath to somehow revive or summon Dementius onto Azeroth with the Dark Heart now appears to be another plan altogether. I don't think Xal'atath was working to ever reconstruct him, considering she wanted him gone and destroyed to do her own plans. It also means that Azeroth wasn't warning us of Dementius, but rather of Xal'atath and her own schemes. Seemingly. As Dementius couldn't have been a factor yet, he wasn't remade just yet. I guess they were on the verge of remaking him, but they didn't have that power source that was needed, and the Dark Heart is that power source. This also makes the Old Gods' reaction, and War Within, Ny'alotha, has also stirred some questions. What I once thought was the Old Gods rebelling against the Void Lords, and their masters against Xal'atath, which could still be the case still, could actually instead be them responding to Dementius' defeat so long ago, and Xal'atath's own betrayal, and sealing her inside of that dagger for so long as penance for her crimes against the Void, as penance as crimes against her old master. I suppose the Old Gods might have never truly stood against their lords, and they are just still working on their behalf, at least back then. And only N'Zoth was the outlier who no longer wanted to be working for them, and rather do things his way. It also makes sense as to why N'Zoth and Xala would then team up later. It makes sense also as to why Xala would make further alliances with, say, a Ridderkron, whom I could see her having a kindred relationship with, considering they both were sealed away, betrayed, and used by cosmic forces above them. As well as Ajara too, of course. I would hope to see them as an entourage of villains for this saga for sure. Though that does make me question why certain beings of the Void followed her, especially in the war between the Old Gods and her. We saw Void Spawn fighting on her behalf against, say, the more fleshy beings of the Old Gods. The Shadowguard Athereals also were working with her for a time, and yet it seems like they must have somehow caught wind that Xal'atath herself was no longer Team Void, but rather Team herself, so they banded together to go work for Dementius, as was probably their original purpose and true intentions and all that jazz. I guess it's still hard to piece together if Dementius and other Void beings, much like the Old Gods, knew of Xala's betrayal and true intentions, considering how the Void kinda operates in seeing certain realities and certain futures. It's not out of line for them to reach that conclusion eventually, of simply putting two and two together that Xal'atath betrayed them and betrayed her master, which also makes so much sense given how much she's attributed the power she's collected with the Dark Heart was her power and no one else's. Until now, of course, where the Athereals took that fixed Dark Heart from Gallywix to restore their master. And yeah, the Athereals, or at least rather some of them, and their king, who's back now, were also Team Dementius the entire time, apparently, as they were offered some form of power for their worlds. I guess the upperclassmen, or at least some of them, were perfectly fine with giving up their world and their world soul, just letting it getting consumed, just so long as they survived. Very topical. And with Dementius' proper and full return on the rise, it makes sense that Xal'atath would team up with us too. Which is yet another thing I had a guessing for. She's not our chummy new best friend or anything like that. I think everyone knows she's going to stab us in the back, and the moment she gets what she wants out of this, she's going to do that. Which is both her Dark Heart, being back with her, but also her former master's defeat, and possibly its total annihilation, maybe. As we do have Dementius' death animation right here. He appears to be sucked within himself or back into the void where he came from. Initially, I thought he might have been reversed into the Dark Heart that he was being pulled in from or summoned from, as its primary purpose was to consume power, not exactly fully distribute it. Which I do think on some level might happen. Whether a portion of his power, after he's been sent back to the Void Realm, I refuse to call it the Voidlands by the way, ugh, or his essence isn't returned to his realm and is instead stored within the Dark Heart somehow, making him quite the lethal battery. In either case, I do think Xal'atath is going to be getting quite the power boost if the Dark Heart wasn't destroyed in this encounter, which I haven't yet seen that it's been cracked or poofed again. But this is where I think many have led to the conclusion that Dementius will somewhat lose his Lord status to Xal'atath, or perhaps the title of Old Devouring going to her now, after being defeated. Making that line of Rotocron ascribed to Xala,
I trust its hunger.
Making so much more sense now. Now, she's freed once again from the shackles of her master to do as she wishes, and will be stronger than ever before. A bigger threat than Dementius, whom I think did not have as many ambitions as she clearly does. As I do think Dementius certainly felt a bit more one note, and Xala was the way to go over him as the big bad. And as a Void Lord does, she'll set her sights back onto our world as was planned. After all, the Dark Heart disappearing on her was essentially a side quest prompted by Illyria breaking that thing, having it get repaired and then stolen from her. Now she can get back to business. And in a way, this worked out for her, I think, as well as the fact it might have just consumed a Void Lord, which is probably one of the strongest things you can store inside that thing beyond, oh, I don't know, the power of a Titan. In hopes that we know where this saga is taking us next, too, and also after that as well, with both Midnight and, of course, Last Titan. And if you've noted the parallels between the Dark Heart and the Dragon Soul, or the Demon Soul, as it was called later on, they're sister objects to one another, created by Neltharion or Deathwing, and the Dragon Soul was later used as a power source to keep the Rift of the Burning Legion back in the War of the Ancients to spread through from the Well of Eternity to summon in these demons, which would later become the Maelstrom, the same Maelstrom that Deathwing fell in and died in. A lot of parallels going on there with all these things and places. And there still remains 2 Well of Eternities practically on Azeroth, one beneath the World Tree of Nodrasil, and the Sunwell, which was created with the vials of the Well of Eternity too. And we know that Quel'Thalas and its Sunwell will play vital roles within Midnight, just as it had always been for the Void before, where Illyria accidentally let the Void fall through from merely tapping into it briefly. And prior to Illyria's accidental meddling, you had Kil'jaeden and the Burning Legion use it too as a gateway for their own forces briefly. So imagine what would happen if you were to, I don't know, use the Dark Heart to help pour through the Sunwell, corrupting the font of light and arcane into a rift for the Void to spread through like wildfire. And on top of that, maybe it's a sure way to somewhat have more access to Azeroth given it's her blood at its peak. Maybe the Sunwell being corrupted is not only a perfect portal for the Void to pour through, but also a gateway or a bridge, so to speak, to get to the World Soul somehow. At the very least, we know that Dementius is dealt with. Xal'atath is going to get away and cause more trouble, not that she has no more masters, and that Quel'Thalas is next on the agenda, it seems. So, with all that being said, it's what I think is going to happen with the conclusion to Karesh, and lead directly into Midnight. I think it makes perfect sense to me, at least. Alternatively, I could see that she seeks out the Sunwell as a means to replace the Dark Heart should it be destroyed again, or I guess forever this time. And where does Illyria fit into all of this? you might ask? Well, I think she's still vital to the Sunwell as before, and for Xala to truly get what she wants maybe, by possessing Illyria or corrupting Illyria, it's the key to unlocking the secrets of the Sunwell maybe. But that's a theory for another day, I think. But what do you all think? Do you think that Xal'atath is on the verge of becoming the next big Void Lord after Dementius' defeat? Do you think she'll use the Dark Heart against the Sunwell to rift in the Void's biggest invasion that rivals the War of the Ancients Demons invasion? Let me know what you all think down below. Love to hear from you guys. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to hear more from me and my community, feel free to join us in our Discord. Or if you like me enough, please support me on my Patreon like these amazing folks here. You can also hit that join button too. All helps in keeping this channel alive and well. But until next time, my friends, see ya!